Hey guys, new video here. Been a while. Today we're going to be talking about the math that goes into the Alba temple and like the simulations that I had someone run. I basically paid someone, a friend in chat, Lightja. This all credit goes to him for running these simulations for me. We want to know what are the inner workings of the Alba temple, and if you want to min max based on just the math alone, which option should you choose? So I'll just give you the numbers right now. If you guys are going with a blocking strategy, you are better off in all scenarios, okay? And if you are going to go with a swapping strategy, depending on how many tier 1 rooms spawn at the initially, the more tier 1 rooms that spawn, the better the blocking strategy is, and the less that spawn, like, it's still better by a lot, but like just the numbers are small. Okay, that's the TLDR. If you only care about catalysts of corruption, or like you're focusing down a couple rooms, then you should be blocking. If you don't know what blocking is, I'll go over that a little bit later in the video, just a recap for maybe anyone who's new. But that is what we learned from a lot of these simulations. So why does this stuff matter, right? And this is kind of interesting to me because, you know, in PoE, there's a lot of things where you will just get a feel for like what is and what isn't. And what I mean by this is to take like a very easy scenario, like, have you ever killed Awakener, right? And you're like, am I gonna drop an Awakener's orb, right? And so you do Awakener A, you're like, oh, okay. And from like the thousands and thousands of kills that people have tracked, you know, it's about a 1 in 4 chance, and that's like safe to assume, right? You kill the Malvin, you want to get her orb. That's probably like a 1 in 4 as well, 1 in 5, something like that, right? Based on the data that people have tracked. You know, you're only one person, you can only track so much, but these things with only like 2 options, they're like a little bit easier. Now, you can kind of apply this to like thinking about other things that are way hard to track, right? For example, the next level up would be like, you know, how many ancient orbs for a headhunter? Does the belt level matter? How many ferric apes on average to get a headhunter, right? These things are slightly harder. And then we come into something that's like, you know, for me, like, you know, I'm okay at math, but like there's so many variables going on here, and so many like assumptions going on that it's really hard to get a pure mathematical basis on what you should be doing in the temple without just doing a simulation, right? So once again, this is Lightja's numbers from chat. He ran all the simulations based on the criteria that I gave him, and how the temple works and everything. So what are we trying to find out? Okay, I'll give a quick recap here. So when you spawn a temple, right, this one is already halfway done, but if I were to take like a fresh temple, you're going to have all these rooms, and then up to, I think, about 8 or 9 of them are going to be tier 1, right, with 1 Roman numeral. So I've personally seen recently, I think, like 8 or 9 starting rooms, and this will matter later on. I'll explain. And then from there, your goals are this, right? So for me, someone that's later on in the league, I care about 3 rooms, okay? 3 rooms being the corruption, the locus of corruption, the Doriani's Institute, which lets you double corrupt a gem, right? The locus lets you double corrupt an item, and then the Shrine of Empowerment, because the Shrine of Empowerment is very powerful, because as if it's touching either of the locus or the Doriani's possibilities, it will boost that up by 1 level and give you a better chance of getting that room, right? So the method here is thinking, okay, for all instances, right, what should we be doing if we don't have a Doriani's or a Catalyst, right? Let's say you value those 2. Let's say you value the Locus more. And in this scenario, whenever I'm personally valuing the Locus, which is the tier 3 of this room right here, the Catalyst of Corruption, I'm valuing that above the gem room. If you value something else, you can just swap in that room and use these numbers, you know, to correspond to your preferred rooms, right? But the numbers should be about the same, as long as you're prioritizing 2 rooms and then the Shrine of Empowerment. So we were wondering, okay, given that we have no locus, no gem room, or we have like one of each or something, like, what should we be doing? Should we be blocking off a room or flipping the room? So let me explain what that means. Let's say that you go into a temple and you see these like tier 1 rooms, right? Now the tier 1 rooms, they can either, given that you are doing this in, I forgot to say this at the beginning, this is for Cairns, by the way. This is only for Cairns with these 4 points taken, because these give you super temples. So your options are, you can try to 50-50 that temple into a tier 3, right? Because if, let's say you take this Pools of Restoration and you upgrade it, it has a 50% chance to become a tier 3. Okay, and then the other 50% it just becomes a tier 2. If you flip that pools of restoration into the other room, then this will be canceled and the other room will instantly become tier 2, right? And then of course, if you had like a tier 2 for a reason, let's say the catalyst or the gem room was not here. If you have a tier 2 and you upgrade it once, right? You kill the top architect, it would automatically become tier 3. Everybody knows this. But the interesting thing is, if you swap it, it instantly becomes a tier 3 of the other room. So you see how I don't have a gem room on here? If I were to do an Alva mission right now and I got this room, okay, once again, the top architect to kill him would make this instantly into a tier 3 room, right? With no other possibilities, because you can't 50-50 it to like tier 4. That'd be really crazy, maybe in PoE 2 or something. But then if you were to flip it, whatever that room is will become instant tier 3. So this is interesting and part of our simulation, because what if the other room was, let's say, a gem room, a Doriani's Institute, right? Free Doriani's right away. There's no RNG involved, instantly tier 3. And also, I mean, you can expand this to be like, okay, what if you want an Apex, right? Because an engineering department kind of sucks, right? I mean, yield is all right. I think it's like 15% quantity or something like that. But there are some other rooms that earlier in the league that you might want. For example, a Hall of Champions, right? Welcome to the Champions Club. So that is a tier 3 Legion pylon, you know, lots of splinters, you know, cool stuff from the generals and stuff like that. What if it was an Apex, right? Early on, you can get a free jewel, right? You buy the vial, you get the jewel, and then now you've made half an exalt to an exalt, right? And or maybe it's a Museum of Artifacts, and you go in there, you get a header from it, okay? So things like this are kind of cool to think about, and it's important because you are presented with these two choices, okay? So the two choices overall are like, do I push for tier 3, that 50-50 chance? Because once you get to tier 3, that room is completely closed off. Like you see this Court of Sealed Death, this is strong boxes. And this room right here, for the next 2 sets of Alba I do, well, it doesn't even matter if it's 2 sets. Let's say you forget some, you have like 6 Albas or something, right? It wouldn't matter. This room will never ever show up again. So essentially, let's say I want this catalyst right here. Well, look at this. Like, there's less rooms to choose from for the next 3 rooms because this one is sealed off. Okay, and so while we want to go the other way, you know, why might flipping the room? I'll call it flipping when I say going from like a tier 1 into the other way into a tier 2 with no chance of a tier 3. Well, because of the scenario I just mentioned, where like this room, the engineering department, could become a Doriani's, an Apex, whatever room that you guys want. Okay, so the question in the back of my mind that was really like getting to me was like, okay, there's no way I can possibly do this math, right? This is like way too hard because there's too many things to think about. Is it better to go for tier 3, or is it better to flip mathematically if I have a target 1 or 2 rooms? Okay, and that is what we aimed out to find. So this is actually like really cool because there's so many things that went into it with like assumptions that we did test out. Like if I wanted to change a number, I'll just tell Lightja, and then he would input it into his simulation and tell me. So there's some very, very important rules to follow when we were running this. Number 1 is that we first started with like when a fresh temple spawns, that only like 3 of the rooms were tier 1, right? And then we went all the way up to 6, and we looked at those numbers. And then, of course, after looking at a few of my other temples, I realized that like it can actually go way more than that. Like, for example, the last few temples I had were like 8 or 9 tier 1 rooms, right? So basically, if you want a little TLDR, it's like the more number of starting rooms that are Roman numeral 1, then the better the going to block the room is, right? Better going for that chance of tier 3 room right away. And then this number is higher and higher depending on how many spawns. So there's never an instance where you would want to flip, like mathematically, you would never want to flip the room to get a better chance of the catalyst of corruption, right? It's always going to be in favor of blocking that 50% conversion to block off a room and then leaving less rooms to be picked on future sets of Alva. It's just way too strong. So another thing that we have to assume is that all rooms are random, okay? And I believe this to be pretty true because the number of times I've gotten like one room over like a starting gem room or a corruption chamber is pretty even. Now, if you remember back in the day when we used to do this without Glenotch Cairns, the skill points, man, it was a nightmare, right? Because you would probably get you could go like 6 or 8 hours with no gem room, no corruption chamber. I did it on stream. It was like really frustrating. It was a total crapshoot. But now they're very, very consistent to the point where like I'm getting at least a gem room or a corruption chamber, probably around I want to say like 70 to 80% of the time. You can look at my VODs for if you want to see how those runs went. They were all done on stream, and it was like crazy how many we got following any of these rules. Okay. Another thing to note is that the differences between blocking and flipping were only a few percent at the lower ends. So what that means is like, just to give you a quick example here, let me scroll down our data here. So for example, if we assume that like 6 of the rooms start at tier 1, then what you're going to see is the blocking strategy going for tier 3s to block off those rooms. It was a 28.3% chance to get a corruption chamber. And then what that meant is like if you were gonna swap the room and not go for the blocking, you would, instead of having a 28.3% chance, you would have a 25.7% chance. So not too much of a difference. Like, it is significant, I think. But if you really, really like some other rooms and you want to swap it instead of going for the blocking once you have the Catalyst of Corruption, I mean, why not, right? It's not really like too big a deal. Another thing is like for this assumption is that we prioritized Locus of Corruption and then Gem Room and then Shrine, because the Shrine is like, once you have the first two, it doesn't really matter, right? But if the Shrine is touching one of the two, then it's a chance of getting it all the way there, or at least one level, if that makes sense, right? It makes it a lot easier. So this would be, and this takes into account everything such as if a room hits level 3, then that's removed from the pool. Everything you can think of that would play a role in the temple strategy. For example, like let's say like this had a chance to be like a shrine right now, right? You would obviously take that over the engineering department. Like all these little rules were like fine-tuned in the simulation, and we've run like I think it was like 25,000 simulations on each with these rules to get these numbers. So it feels pretty fair. You can kind of look at this yourself. Like when you get a new temple, when it says like 12 incursions remaining, just look at how many tier 1 rooms you start with, right? Remember, when we started the simulation, we started with like 3, but that's actually not true, because if you look at any starting temple, it's not unlikely to get like 6 to 9, right? Nice, by the way. 6 to like 9 tier 1 rooms. So when you see that there is a larger number of tier 1 rooms, just know that blocking, right, going for the tier 3 instantly on a room that you don't care about becomes way better in the percentages. Okay, and I think this is how we found the difference in like what I was actually getting versus the numbers, right? Because when we ran the numbers for like 50% of these rooms, like 6 of the rooms being tier 1, we found that like it was like 28% chance for the corruption chamber and then 26.2% chance for the gem room. Now what that means is if you multiply the two together, right, because you know how it works with like to get both, right? If the chance is 25% for both, then you would know that the chance to not get either one will be 0.75 raised to the power of 2, right? So you can find the chance not to get it. And so when we ran these numbers, we found we're like, wait a minute, it's really weird that like these numbers are lower. Let me actually just run the numbers right now. If, for example, let's just take like 28 and 26% chance, and this is, remember, with 6 tier 1 rooms, so that would be 0.72 times 0.74, let's just say, right? So that would be a 53% chance to not get either room, right? So that kind of like, I was thinking about that, I was like, wait a minute. But in my testing, what happened is that, I was getting a room once again 75, 70, 75, 80% of the time. I was getting it all the time. It was actually to the point where if I didn't get a temple that had a gem room or a corruption chamber, I'd be surprised. I'd be like, wait a minute, like what happened here? Like how am I so unlucky? I didn't get either one, right? So, and the way to explain it is because on average, you actually get a lot more of these, right? There's a lot more of these than initially planned. But however, it does seem that these are completely even spawn. So like if you look at this temple right here, if I want to run 3, the chance of getting a corruption chamber again is not lower than any of these, right? You know how like some things are weighted, like ancient orbs are weighted, right? When you use an ancient orb on a belt, it's way more common to get a Jebaited Breath or a Worm's Molt than it is to get a Headhunter, right? But in the temple, I don't believe there's any weird tricky rules to play. We also assume that like obviously they were connected, because like, you know, if your corruption chamber turn up right here and you couldn't get to it, that would suck, right? So we just assume that they're all like they're all connected and everything. And this turned out to be really cool to see the math and to feel kind of like, you know, vindicating your choices, because we really had no idea, right? Like initially when we were doing like tons and 10, 20, 30 of these temples, I was always thinking like, you know, I don't know if it's better to go for the blocking or go for the flipping, because you know a lot of the time what ended up like why it was so confusing is because a lot of the time when I was going with the flipping method, I'll go with this term, like this kind of strategy, where if I didn't have either a gem room or a catalyst, I would just start flipping. I didn't want to go for the blocking because my logic was, well, if I flip I get tier 2s, and then when I get that room again, right, because I don't have a gem or a corruption chamber, one of the tier 2s has to give me the gem or corruption, and when I flip it, it's instantly tier 3, right? It's like, whoa, wow, you know, instead of like you know, you flip it and you get a tier 2 of this, you know, I could instantly get a tier 3. So that's why it was like really, and a lot of time we did. There was, I can't tell you how many times, maybe like 4 or 5 times so far, where I was down to 1 encouragement remaining. There wasn't like there wasn't any chance of getting a gem or a corruption chamber unless I flipped into a tier 3, and on the last one encouragement remaining, we would just get it. And it was like, oh, like what the heck? Like that's crazy. And that's why Glenotch Cairns is so crazy, because there's always a chance for you to get something out of your temple, and the temple is just so juiced. So yeah, but now that we know the math, we know that blocking is always the way to go in any scenario where you value any couple of rooms, okay? And remember, it gets better the more tier 1 rooms that you start with, although even with the lowest amount possible, it is still the better option. So if you want to get the most out of your temple and you want to focus down a couple rooms, what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to block every time, okay? Blocking, once again, just means that you are going to go for the tier 3 chance, given that the temple, the other option, isn't something that you want, okay? So you know, make sure you don't make any mistakes. This simulation is also assuming perfect play and no mistakes, meaning that like let's say you get this catalyst of corruption, you don't accidentally teleport the wrong way and kill the wrong guy and shift this into a tier 3 of like some garbage room, right? Or like when you have like no rooms, like this tombs shows up, you don't accidentally, you know, kill the wrong guy in there, right? So you got, you know, play correctly, but that's the easiest part of it. So that's the video. I know that was kind of a rambly video, but I thought it was really interesting, the math behind the temple and all that stuff. And try it out, you know, try out the blocking method. You are better off doing that to get more of the temples that you want. Okay, thanks for watching my video, guys. I'll see you guys later. Bye guys, bye.